Hey everybody, it's Floyd, your wise old motorcycle uncle here. Back again today in the shop. I've got my SR500 lined up here behind me. I've already got the oil drained out and the gas drained out. I've got my toolbox and all my power tools and my hand tools sitting right here. I have 2 service carts ready to receive the parts. I have to take everything off that sticks down below the bottom of it. And then I'm going to put it up on a high lift motorcycle jack. The problem with these high lift jacks is that you have to have like a double down tube frame or a flat engine bottom or some such surface that you can lift on. Why don't I use one of the 2 tables I have? Well, they're full of parts, and one is full of parts for my CL72 restoration. The other one has the CL72 on it. So we're going to get to work on this. I'm going to start by removing the exhaust system and the fuel tank and the front skid plate, and then we'll put it up on the lift. Let's start back here. Loosen it instead of tightening. I'm just going to leave that finger tight for a little bit so I don't put any strain on the other end of the pipe or on the head studs. It's going to be a long, hot, sweaty day. My plan here is simple. By the end of the day, to have this frame ready for degreasing and painting. Because the whole object of taking this thing apart now is cosmetic. I want to make it look as good as I possibly can. Now let me take this bolt out the rest of the way out of the exhaust system. I'll put this in a safe place. Okay, to drain the oil out of this thing, if you don't know, if you've never had an SR500 before, you know there's an oil tank that you fill here in front of the gas tank. It has a dipstick in it if you've never worked on an SR500. To drain the oil, you have 2 places to drain. You have this to drain, and you also have a drain plug under the engine back here. I actually like to drain both of them just to make sure, because there's air bubbles and passages where things get caught. And I'll still drip some oil when I take the engine out because there'll be some in the oil lines. Got my toolbox handy, so I'll try to put things up and put them away as I go. If you're wondering about my toolbox over here, it's actually an old file cabinet for blueprints. I have stacked a few of them together, and then I put some wheels under them. I used 4 caster wheels, and most people use, used 2 rigid casters and 2 fixed casters, but I put 4 swivel casters. That way I can maneuver it in any direction I want to. The catch being I don't have any brakes on it, so I could have put some on it, but I didn't think about it at the time. But it works well. It's not like it's rolling away here in this shop. We'll go ahead now and pop the tank off, and then I'll get the skid plate off the bottom. It's just a little sump guard. If you watched the last episode with this bike, I had gone over the tank with a crossbar dent puller out of a paintless dent removal kit, and I used one of the reflector boards to make sure that I pulled the dents all the way out, and I've got it looking pretty good. So when I go to strip this tank and redo it, it should take very little, if any, fill at all. I've already unhooked it from the carburetor. In fact, I've got the line here going in the gas can that I use to drain it. Let me set this back out of the way. Quite frankly, watching a dirty old man get greasy and hot and sweaty on a summer day, tearing apart an old motorcycle, would be boring if we did it all in slow motion. So I'm going to be alternately doing a combination of stop motion and sped up video, skipping over boring parts. But if I see anything that I feel like should be pointed out to you, I'll be sure to stop, call your attention to it, and get back on it. It's amazing how much dirt collects on top of these skid plates. Blocks of wood are always handy to have. I'm going to pause the video for a second and figure out how to get this thing up on the jack safely. Well, I did discover one thing. In order to lift it with the high lift jack, I need to remove the chain first. The drive chain comes in the way. I'm placing it where it's lifting on the passenger foot peg brackets. But the chain actually hangs down beneath one of them. And there we are, safely in the air, at a good working height. Everything strapped down properly and settled on the lift good. I'm going to start by taking the new stainless steel fenders back off of it so they don't get damaged by me dropping anything else on them while I'm stripping it down. And then we'll go from there. I'm not going to be talking a whole lot else. You may hear fans running because it is a hot day. So I'm going to get some air circulating in this shop. Like I said, this is not going to be an every single step by step. This is just going to be a quick, I'm literally just going to speed up this disassembly process, and we'll call it a day. At the end of the day, show you the results. I know I'm shooting the video here, but one thing I will do when I'm working on a motorcycle, especially one that I know was relatively unmolested and factory stock, I will stop and use my phone and take pictures of such things as the wiring wire harness routing, the hose routing, and clamp location. That's just very helpful putting it back together. Not all of these things are pictured in service manuals, not even in factory service manuals. In the old days, the wire routing and everything used to be pictured in the shop assembly manuals that the dealers got for putting them together out of the crate. But it's a hit and miss whether you'll be able to find this information in the service manual for bikes of this era. Do you keep a pair of tweezers in your toolbox? You should. They come in handy. Yeah, I know it looks like I'm hop, skipping, and jumping around. But you're basically watching an old man with attention deficit project disorder work on a motorcycle. I'll get it done, and it'll be damn near perfect. But it'll look chaotic. Anytime you find bodged up crap like this on your project motorcycle, especially holding a cable or something together, throw it in the trash and fix whatever the problem was. Here's another very handy tool for you to have if you don't already have one. That is a ball end hex driver. The ball end will fit into these nuts and screws at an angle and allow you to tighten them or loosen them. Granted, now if the bolt is frozen into place, you run the risk of snapping the ball off the end of this, so don't use them wrong. But in the right circumstances, these things can be a lifesaver because they allow you to get in up to a steep angle like that to get in reach a screw that might otherwise be inaccessible. Okay, online you'll see a lot of people talking about aftermarket carburetors, and they'll try to tell you that the clones are just as good as a genuine McCuney. Ignore these people. The clones may be good enough and they may work okay, but there's nothing quite like a quality carburetor with this little stamp right here that says made in Japan. And it doesn't matter if it's a McCuney or a genuine Kia, as long as it's a genuine carburetor. Yes, a lot of the clones will work, and I have used them on some of my bikes in the past, but you just can't beat real Japanese quality. Well, I don't know how many of you made it this far into the video, but here it's about lunchtime, so I'm going to go clean up and have lunch. Then I'm going to come back, and I want to lower the jack down so that the rear wheel is touching. The reason being, I'm about to take the front wheel off, and that will change the balance point of the whole thing. And I want to make sure that it's not so far off balance that it tips the entire jack over. So that's why I'm going to do it. I will let it down for safety, enough to take the front wheel off. And then if it's still balanced good, I'll jack it up, take the rear wheel off. If not, I'll take the rear wheel off with it on the ground. Well, how about that? It's time to get back to work here. Let's sit down here at the front wheel and pull this thing apart. First thing we got to do is get the cotter pin out. I'm just loosening the cap on the back side. I'm not fully removing it because you really need to get the axle shaft out first before you do that. And with that, the front wheel is off. Now let's lift up on the jack a little bit. I'm not going to try to go all the way up in the air before I remove this. One thing I'm proud to see, at least the cotter pins were properly installed. But I knew the back one would be because I installed it myself. The front one, I didn't. But I don't care how cheap you are. The only excuse for reusing one of these things is if you're broke down beside the road, don't have a spare one to put on. And then as soon as you get home, change it. Now we'll remove the rear brake system of the unit. Okay, now let's pick it back up. Whoops, I forgot to cut the camera back on before I pulled the swing arm out. But that's okay, it was just one long bolt right here and it slid right out with no problem. The foot pegs, on the other hand, are giving me a hard time. There are any little brackets that look like there's, and it looks like the bolt itself is supposed to be pressed in. Unfortunately, it's spinning. Well, I'm not sure at what point the camera battery went dead while I was doing all this, but that's okay. Because you really need to see every step. But here's an interesting thing. You have to be able to unlock the helmet lock in order to get the screw out of it to take it loose from the frame. Of course, by relocking it afterwards, it keeps you from losing the screw, which is a nice handy feature. I realized that I said earlier that I wasn't going to take the steering yoke apart, but it turns out I am after all. I couldn't tell it with all the weight on it because it swung so easy, but just the bare yoke is really notchy. So at the very least it needs re-greasing. Put a bucket down to catch any bearings. Well, it missed a couple of them, but that's okay. My plan is to replace them with tapered roller bearings anyway. I just didn't want a bunch of bearings going all over the floor of the shop. I actually have a drawer full of assorted sizes of steering head ball bearings and probably have the right ones to put them back. But I want to improve this one, not restore it. Here we go, let's walk up here and have a look. I'm ready to pull the engine out now. I know it comes out of this side of the frame because this motor mount unbolts completely. Now on the front here, both sides unbolt completely, but I don't think it's necessary to get it out. But you'll see on this side, this tab is a permanent fixture. So that lets you know that you remove this tab so you can pull the engine out in that direction. So that's pretty much how it goes at this point. So there's been a lot of plans changed as I've gone along, but anytime you're dealing with a motorcycle this old, you have to remember this thing left the factory in 1978. And she's in rough shape. Rougher than it looked like. So I wound up having to pull it all the way down to the bare frame. Oh well, now comes the really fun part. It's time for me to hoist this engine out and put it on this table here behind me. And there we have it. The engine is out. Okay. When it's time to detail out the engine here, I'll come back and kind of let you watch along with that. As far as the frame goes, it's just a matter of pressure washing it, cleaning it, painting it black, and re-greasing all the grease fittings and putting everything back together. So I'm not going to bother with showing anybody how I do any of that until it's actual time to reassemble it. And meantime, though, I will come back for another video and show you what I do with this engine to make it look better than new. I'd also like to go ahead and mention, as some of you are aware of, I'm a member of the Vintage Japanese Motorcycle Club. Now, a lot of people think we're a bunch of old fuddy-duddies with nothing but 305 Hondas who will get mad at you if you don't have all your bolts turned the correct way, or if you have the wrong size letter B on your 69 CT70H. But there are quite a few of us who like customs and modified motorcycles as well as stock. So this year at the Barber Vintage Festival in Birmingham, Alabama, the second weekend of October, We'll be having the 3rd annual Misfits Custom Motorcycle Show put on by the VJMC. Every Japanese custom motorcycle 20 years or older is welcome to participate. Again, that's at the Barber Vintage Festival, the 3rd annual Misfits Motorcycle Show. I'd love to see you there. I'll be judging the show again this year. I'll be on the panel of judges this year. And I can't wait to see what everybody brings. So if you've stuck around this long in this video, thank you. Please like and subscribe. And as always, keep riding, keep wrenching, and stay crazy.